I think now it is live streamed. It shows it's live streamed.
It's showing live stream.
Yeah, we got that notification.
Right. So start, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Today we all have gathered here to condole the sad demise of our SCB member, late Dr. GVG Krishnamurthy, who was also ex-Chief Election Commissioner. Now, I would request Mr. Vikas Singh, our Honorable President, Supreme Court Bar Association, to say a few words for the departed soul.
Dear friends, it's a moment of sadness that we have lost a very distinguished member of our bar. And in fact, our Mr. GVG Krishnamurthy is survived by another very distinguished member of our bar. His son is a senior advocate and practicing with us, Venki, as we all call him. And before I would like to say anything about Mr. Krishnamurthy, I would request Prashant to play a small video which we have prepared on Mr. Krishnamurthy.
As Secretary Supreme Court National Research Committee with CJI, DP Sinha, Gajendra Gatkar and Justice K.N. Vanchu. With CJI, Sinha, Vanchu at the All India Conference in Vigan. With V.K. Krishna Menon, former Indian High Commissioner to UK and former Defence Minister. With Vice President and later President Dr. Zakir Hussain, who wrote the foreword of his book. With CJI, Gajendra Gatkar and his wife. With Shri Krishan Kant, Vice President of India. With Shri P.V. Narasimha Rao, Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh at that time. Addressing meeting presided by Chief Justice of India, Sikri. Letter from former Foreign Minister Narasimha Rao sanctioning the Indian Society of International Law building. With President R. Venkat Raman on the roof of the ISIL building. Presenting book to the UN Secretary General Kurt Waldheim. President Gyani Zal Singh, CJI R.S. Pathak and Dr. Nagendra Singh at the function. With President of India, Dr. Shankar Dayal Sharma. President of India, Gyani Zal Singh. With Vice President B.D. Jetty, Dr. Nagendra Singh, President World Court. With Shri Vajpayee, PM. With Shri Vajpayee and I.K. Gujarat, former Prime Ministers. With Chief Justice of India, R.S. Pathak and Professor Upendra Bakshi in Moscow. A letter for visiting faculty for IAS and IPS officers. His second book in the year 1990. His first book in the year 1968. His third book, Great Administrators of India. Fourth book on the Presidents of India, with Sri V.R. Krishna Iyer. Addressing Columbia University in the US. With President of Republic of Bangladesh. Award by Shri Balram Jakar, Speaker of India. Award from President Shankar Dayal Sharma. With Prime Minister of Japan. With President K.R. Narayanan and CJI Ranganath Mishra. Another award from President Shankar Dayal Sharma. With former Prime Minister Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee. With PMs I.K. Gujarat. With President K.R. Narayanan. With Vice President Krishan Kant, which is Shanti Bhushan and Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer. With President Pranab Mukherjee. With His Holiness the Dalai Lama. With Shri Ram Jethmalani and Shri Brajesh Mishra, former Secretary to PM. With the Chief Minister of Sikkim. with President Pratibha Patil, with President of Mauritius, at the convocation of Ford School of Management, where he was a life patron. Thank you.
Dear friends, as you would have seen from the video just played a little while ago, the kind of diversity that Dr. Krishnamurti possessed and the kind of roles that he played in his life. Dr. GVG Krishnamurti was a former Chief Election Commissioner from 1993 to 1999. He was appointed as an Election Commissioner of India, which he held for 6 long years, laying and strengthening the foundations for the highest democratic functioning of an independent constitutional body. Large-scale election reforms were brought about by him. Prior to that, he was Secretary in the Law Ministry, Government of India, and later Member Secretary, Law Commission of India. He served the Ministry and the Government of India in various departments with distinction from 1960 to 1992 for about 32 years. He also functioned as an arbitrator for 4 years. He was a gold medalist and university record holder for 7 years. He also enrolled as an advocate of the Andhra Pradesh High Court and also became a member of the Supreme Court Bar Association. Shortly thereafter, he was invited to be a professor of law at Osmania University, Hyderabad. Thereafter, he joined Government of India and served in several ministries, which included Commerce, Defense, Home, External Affairs, Urban Development, Education, etc. He was responsible for filing of appeals in the US courts in the Bhopal gas matters and finalized the settlement of US 470 million to the Government of India. He helped the Indian shipping industry to grow and retrieved arrested ships in various countries. It's a long list association with numerous chief justices, judges, civil servants, academics, diplomats, and doyens in the press and media. He had a rare honor of working with persons holding the highest constitutional office of all the 3 wings. He was associated with eminent jurists, constitutional and international law experts like Dr. V.V. Giri, President of India, Dr. Zakir Hussain, Vice President, later on President Mr. V.K. Krishna Menon, Defense Minister, Dr. Nagendra Singh, President, International Court of Justice, T.N. Kaul, Foreign Secretary, P.N. Haksar, Secretary to PM, Muhammad Hidayatullah, Chief Justice of India, Justice R.S. Pathak, CJI, Justice P.N. Bhagwati, CJI, Justice M.H. Kania, CJI, Mr. Naren Day, Attorney General for India, Professor Upendra Bakshi, eminent jurist, to name only a few. He advised President Giri, President Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad, President K.R. Narayanan, and Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri and Indira Gandhi, and P.V. Narasimha Rao and Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee. He was an expert in international law and diplomacy and authored to the world-renowned books titled Dynamics of Diplomacy in 1968 and Dialects and Dimension of Modern Diplomacy in 1980. He was one of the founding fathers of the Indian Society of International Law and personally monitored the construction of its building opposite the Supreme Court of India. He represented India in the UN General Assembly in 1980. He was a recipient of more than 100 awards and honors. After retirement, he was associated with at least 10-15 organizations like Ford School of Management, for which he was a life patron, Rashtriya Sainik Sanstha, etc., in an honorary capacity in order to satiate his public spiritedness. He was very active till 83 when his health began to deteriorate and left for his heavenly abode on 14/4/2021. We pray to the Almighty to give the family of Mr. Krishnamurti the strength to bear this loss. And it will be a loss which cannot ever be replaced as far as our association is concerned.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I would request Mr. Pradeep Rai, our Honorable Vice President, Supreme Court Bar Association, to speak few words on the departed soul.
Mr. late GVG Krishnamurti was one of the finest administrators which we have witnessed, and his name actually surfaced prior to that when he was in the Defense Ministry when this helicopter purchase files were supposed to be cleared. I remember that on several occasions, because of his notings, he had closely worked with this Mr. Kalam, those days who was scientific advisor of Defense Minister. Later and earlier, he was with DRDO. So DRDO files used to go to him only, and then he was supposed to examine and clear it. I remember his tenure when he was appointed as election commissioner, because he served as election commissioner only when he was appointed. Those days, TN session era was very prevalent. And TN Session was very powerful election commissioner who earlier had worked with Rajiv Gandhi as his security chief, because he was heading this NSG department and secretary security, and he used to actually be part of that convoy, and they thought that he will be very helpful for the elections and all. Thereafter, the government, when they felt that Session is actually doing things arbitrary and he is not listening to any of the secretaries, they appointed two secretaries, two election commissioners. One was MS Gill, other one was DBG Krishnamurti ji. When he was appointed, then they realized that he was not that kind of person who will actually toe the line of the government, but he believed in the independence of the chair, independence of the institution. Mr. Krishnamurti was in charge of UP elections. During his tenure, only UP elections were actually carried. I had several occasions when I met him when he was in the office. Even after demitting his office, I had an opportunity to meet him at Indirapuram house. I think his daughter was staying there those days. Mr. Dr. Radha Bodapati, I don't remember the exact name, but I could recall only by this list when we got. But I had visited there twice at her house. He was in the flats. He did not have a means to buy. He was an honest officer. Mr. Krishnamurti actually was known because TN Session filed a petition, and in that petition in Supreme Court, it was held earlier that they will not interfere in the functioning of Chief Election Commissioner Session. Thereafter, because of the principles only, he had a very good rapport developed with TN Session, and he performed his duties completely as per merits. And free and fair polls era is started only by TN Session, and thereafter Mr. Krishnamurti. He was a very esteemed member of our association. He had several contributions to the nation. His son, our dear friend, Dr. G.B. Rao, he is one of the member, and his contribution. He was this Krishnamurti was a gold medalist. He had many achievements. He had many feathers in his hat. But other than that, he was a great human being. He always stick to the principles, and he had contributed a lot to the society. We mourn his death, and his family is very capable. They are actually they can actually take care of themselves, and they can also take care of others. But the principles and the teachings and the guidance of late DBG Krishnamurti ji, whatever he has given to them, that is the asset. And if that is to be carried by us and by them, that will be really great for the nation, great for the society, and great for the family. I can't forget his meetings with him, and I miss the way he used to address his language, and his communication was very clear. Even if he wanted to communicate something, those days election commissions, they did not have the process of filing the cases before commission. Those days normal complaints used to go, and the deputy election commissioner, those days Subhas Pani, I think he was the deputy election commissioner, Mr. Pani used to scrutinize it and give it to them. But the way he used to handle the cases, despite all these lawyers appearing before him, that was commendable. He made a policy on symbols, on which the political parties started getting symbols. Otherwise, a new person, if you are forming a party, despite filing 300 affidavits and having all these Aadhaar card, voter IDs and all, you were not supposed to get a election symbol. He created a policy on this. So we are going. His contributions are immense. His contribution in the bar is immense, and we are really going to miss him. And we fondly remember him. It is the greatest loss to the bar. and we are with the family at this time. Thank you, Prashant.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, I would request the family and the friends to say a few words for the departed souls. We have message from Honorable Mr. Justice M.L. Venkat Chalaya, former Chief Justice of India. I would request Mr. Dr. G.V. Rao, son of G.V.G. Krishnamurti, sir, to read the message.
Thank you, Prashant. Thank you, Supreme Court Bar Association, for actually hosting this event in memory of my esteemed father. My father was contribution to the Supreme Court Bar and lawyers is that he was in charge of the government litigation, and therefore he was constantly monitoring it with the Attorney General and other law officers, which we would not like to speak in detail because those are matters which the government's litigation is carried out. You have a successor, Shri P.K. Malhotra and Dr. T.K. Vishwanathan, who will tell you more about how government litigation is handled by the secretaries in the ministry. But Justice Venkatachalaya's message I will read first, and I hope it is being viewed. Is it on your screen? Can you please?
Yes, sir.
Is it on? Has it come?
On the screen, sir.
Yeah, okay. A tribute by Justice M.N. Venkatachalaya, former Chief Justice of India. And he says, Dr. G.V.G. Krishnamurti, the scholar statesman. We have assembled here to pay our homage to the memory of Dr. G.V.G. Krishnamurti. Death took him away gently and respectfully on 14th April 2021. He was 86 years old. Dr. Krishnamurti was an eminent life in our times, a man of profound wisdom and strong convictions with vast practical experience in administration and public affairs. After a splendid academic record, he joined the bar and also taught law at the university in Andhra Pradesh. Later, he entered the service of Government of India, where he held several high positions. He was secretary in the Ministry of Law. Later, he was appointed to the high office of the Election Commissioner of India, an office he held with great statesmanship. Dr. Krishnamurti's intellectual contributions in the field of international law are significant. He authored two notable books, Dynamics of Diplomacy and Dialectics of Modern Diplomacy, for the benefit of career diplomats and students of international law. He had close association with the Indian Society of International Law. More than all, Dr. Krishnamurti in his social and intellectual interactions came through as an affable, generous and understanding friend. He was a delightful conversationalist and raconteur. He was an urbane and highly cultivated gentleman. I might recall the many pleasant interactions with him during the 90s, where the discussions would veer around the then much debated influence of international human rights regime on the extent to which treaty obligations could by judicial incorporation built into domestic law in the common law system and jurisdictions. Great judicial exploits were taking place both in UK and in India in this behalf. Great changes are taking place now globally under the immense influence of the new technologies and economic forces. Even the Bitcoin will affect the global monetary system. The law is increasingly becoming a junior branch of economics. In the international scene, the individual is moving center stage, where once only the sovereign states were the princess. This is the influence of human rights philosophy. Machine intelligence will influence every department of our life and usher in civilizational changes. A tribute to the memory of versatile scholars like Dr. Krishnamurti would be to promote a system of engaging the younger generation of the bar in discussions and debates in the touching the revolutionary changes affecting our future. I convey to Sri Dr. G. Venkatesh Rao, senior advocate, and members of his family my heartfelt condolences. My prayers for the Sadgati of the departed soul. Thank you. Prashant, I think that's the end of the message.
You are muted, Prashant. Prashant, you are muted. You are muted.
Now, I would request Dr. T.K. Vishwanathan, former Union Law Secretary and Constitutional and Legal Advisor to the President of India, to say a few words for the departed soul.
Sir, you are on mute. Mr. Vishwanathan, you are on mute.
Can you hear me? Good evening, Ms. Prasad. Good evening to Mr. Vikas Singh, Mr. G. Venkatesh, and other my colleagues, P.K. Malhotra and Justice Satish Chandra and others. Mr. G.V.G. Krishnamurthy, we had intense interactions for a long time when I joined the Ministry of Law and Justice in the late 80s. And I can recollect a lot of memorable interactions with him. As Vikas Singh pointed out, how his interests were so varied, and he was a man of all seasons. In the law ministry, he was a great he was a source of inspiration for all the youngsters. When I joined the ministry as a junior deputy secretary way back in the 80s, he was a special secretary heading the legal aid committee, and he was responsible for expanding the Ministry of Law and Justice in a very big way. He created many posts and many avenues for promotion, and many of our youngsters were greatly inspired by him. His doors were always open. You can walk in, and it was never, there is no hierarchy or protocol. Any youngster could walk in, and he used to tell us he shared his knowledge. He used to have a varied interactions in various departments, and every time you entered into his room, he came back with some new idea, a new principle, a new jurisprudence, and new anecdote on many things, very humorous also, because he has handled many important political personalities, international relations, international leaders. So it was very interesting. We used to go to him every time. In fact, he handled the shipping ministry, and he was responsible for reforming the whole shipping laws. And I remember still one day when he told me, Vishwanathan, do you know what is a Mareva injunction? We didn't know what is Mareva injunction. He said ant and pillar orders. He used to tell us and he used to educate us. It was so fascinating. And we all had the opportunity of going to London for training. He used to guide us. He used to tell us how to go to London, how to enjoy London, how to meet people. He was a man of such a great, he had full of life in him. And he was, when he was the member secretary of Law Commission, very often we used to walk in during the lunchtime, and he will be waiting for us. He will offer us tea, and he will tell us so many stories. And he was the first person in the law ministry to represent India in the General Assembly. Law secretaries, we go to the unilateral meetings, we did the Indian delegation. But he made history in the 80s when he trailblazed by becoming an expert in diplomacy. And later, that saw to the emergence of Indian Society of International Law, the big building which stands before the Supreme Court, which is due to his efforts. And we can go on narrating about our experience. It will be very difficult, but he continued to guide us from every time when he was in the election commission, and then after his retirement, he used to call us when I was holding some important posts. He will tell me, he'll guide me what is to be done in important matters. It is really amazing with a short span of such a it is a great loss, not only for the family, but also for the nation, because from one of the anecdotes I could recall, even before Narasimha Rao could become the Prime Minister, Mr. GVG used to drive him in his car in Delhi. So it is where he educated Narasimha Rao in law and matters, not only Narasimha Rao, many other people. And he was a fine gentleman. He had no malice to anybody. That's all. And he liked youngsters. And as Justice Venkatachalaya said, it is necessary to have continuing legal education. We have to encourage youngsters to learn new things. And GVG was a role model for all of us in the law ministry. I pray that his soul rests in peace. My condolences to the family, GVG Venkatesh, who is my close friend. And GVG ensured that when Venkatesh got married in 1992, I think in Hyatt, he ensured that all the ministry
93.
yeah, it ensured that all the entire law ministry should be in the Hyatt. irrespective of in a role or the post. And it's really amazing. I pray to God and to the family to bear this irreparable loss. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, the President of the Bar Association.
Thank you so much, Vishwanathan, sir. Now, I would request Mr. C.K. Malhotra, former Union Law Secretary, Ministry of Law and Justice, to say a few words for the departed souls.
Dear friends, today through this webinar, we have assembled to remember and pay our tributes and respect to Dr. GVG Krishnamurthy, popularly among his own group. He used to be addressed as GVG, a person who made a unique contribution in the field of law, more particularly in the government sector. He had an illustrious career as an officer of the Indian Legal Service in the government and later as Election Commission of India. Starting his career as an advocate, he became a law professor at Osmania University and thereafter joined Government of India, advising various ministries and departments of the government on all legal issues. His contribution in the field of law, more particularly international law, is also well known through the books, which has been already referred to by the previous speakers, including the book titled as Dynamics of Diplomacy and the other book, Modern Diplomacy, Dialectics and Dimensions. And our Dr. Vishwanathan has also mentioned, he also represented India in the United Nations General Assembly in 1980 as representative of the Government of India. People remember Dr. GVG Krishnamurthy for his contribution, particularly in strengthening laws and procedure of conducting elections. In 1995, he revealed his sarcastic side of his personality when Supreme Court ruled equal status to all three election commissioners, because I think there was a lot of controversy going on that who is number one, whether it is the chief election commissioner or the election commissioner. And he, in his own humble way, after the judgment came, made his comments. I don't want to go into those comments, but I think they were widely publicized during that period in the newspapers. And I remember in 2011, speaking in one of the seminars, which I also attended, he said, punish those who don't use their right to vote. I think even today the talk is also going on, whether right to vote, which is given to us as statutory right, whether it should be made mandatory that people should go and mandatorily vote. He also advocated for making the voting compulsory and also for debarring criminals from contesting elections. I think as an election commission, he made a big mark. And while working the Government of India from 1960 to 1992, of course, I didn't have much interaction with him because when I joined the law ministry, he was already working as a member secretary in the law commission and later on shifted to the Election Commission of India. But when he was working as election commissioner, later when he was participating in seminars and conferences, number of times I got an opportunity to interact with him and learn from his experiences. But as Dr. Vishwanathan was also saying, the kind of mark which he has made in the law ministry, I think because of the kind of rapport which he used to enjoy with other bureaucrats is very, very important and was very important from the point of view as to how the ministry itself functions. I was told one instance when he was secretary in the ministry, probably the posts in the law ministry, because the workload has increased like anything, litigation in the Supreme Court was increasing. We didn't have number of officers to deal with these matters, and the pressure on the law ministry and the officers of the law ministry was increasing, and we needed more officers in the law ministry. At that time, when the references were coming from the finance ministry, what he will do, depending on the number of references which are coming and depending on the references, he will withhold some of the references and call the senior officers to the ministry and explain him, see how many references you are sending to us and where are the officers to deal with this kind of matter. Why can't you help us by sanctioning some more posts so that we can get some more officers to handle this kind of matter? So I think his persuasive skill and the diplomacy which he used, that helped the law ministry to get more and more officers. So I think that is one example which I thought I must share with you. And the way the rules and regulations were, I think, strengthened in the law ministry were also, he was responsible for it. Dr. Vishwanathan has also, because he had an opportunity to work with him, he has already shared his experiences with you. And I know Dr. Satish Chandra, a former judge, and who was also working with the Law Commission earlier and had an opportunity to work with Dr. GVJ Krishnamurthy, will also share his experiences having worked with Dr. Krishnamurthy. Dr. Krishnamurthy led an active life even after demitting office and shared his experience on various forums, including some leading educational institutions. He had friends in all walks of life, as Dr. Vikas Singh has also mentioned, including the bureaucrats, diplomats, judges, advocates, politicians, and academicians. The best homage to him will be to work as fearlessly as he was working for betterment of the system. Today in this assembly, we pay our respect and homage to the departed soul. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you so much, Malhotra sir. Now I would request Honorable Mr. Justice Satish Chandra, former judge, Allahabad High Court, to say a few words for the departed soul.
Good evening to everybody. My previous speakers have already told about Dr. GVG Krishnamurthy and his valuable contribution towards the nation. But I would like to discuss or speak about my personal interaction with him. After getting the LLM degree, I joined Indian Society of International as a student for the diploma, and Dr. GVG Krishnamurthy was a teacher. So that was my first interaction with him, and he became my guru in the year of 1977. And the time has passed. I went to various services and so on. So again, we meet in 1989 in the Law Ministry when I joined as a director of the Law Commission of India. And fortunately, he became the member secretary and my boss of the Law Commission of India. And he taught me how to write the reports, not only reports, but how to write the books also. He also promoted me and also encouraged to write the books. And that is why he wrote a foreword for my 2 books. And today I have some books. And I can say it was due to his inspirations that I was able to write some books. That was the things. About the diplomacy, I have seen his one example. I will quote here, only one example, very briefly. There was a building construction for the Indian Society of International Law, and there was some shortage of the funds, as P.K. Malhotra told her. So diplomacy came. He invited the FA, financial advisor, as well as the CPWD people, and Justice K.N. Singh, who was the chairman of the Law Commission at that time, and myself and himself in the Indian Society of International Law. And everything was sorted out on lunch diplomacy. So that was the best example of the diplomacy I have seen this one. Dr. GVG Krishnamurthy made valuable contributions in various fields as discussed by all. And he was an asset for me. He guided me even when I took the oath as a High Court judge. He guided me and he gifted me a pen to write the oath ceremony and write a first judgment with that pen. So still that pen is still with me, and a valuable contribution in my life. That pen I am preserving it. He was a guru, he was my boss, he was my teacher, and I can say that whatever I am today is due to his valuable contribution in my life. And it is due to him only. If these brief words, I can say only one thing: he was an asset to the nation. He was an asset to so many people, and now he is an asset to God. Thank you. Om Shanti.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I would request if anybody from the EC or any other member who wants to speak for Dr. GVG Krishnamurthy. Now I would request the Hindu Maulik Prasad, Honorary Secretary, Supreme Court Bar Association, to say a few words.
Thank you, Prashant. Respected members of the family and members of the bar and our distinguished guests. What has been talked about Dr. GVG Krishnamurthy, I don't think I have anything to say. And one thing which is for sure is that his departure is a great loss, not only to the institution of judiciary, but also to the nation. On behalf of the Supreme Court Bar Association, I condole his death, and my condolences to the family, to Dr. G.V. Rao, our senior. And with the permission of our president, I close the ceremony for today. Vikas sir, do I have your permission?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Final
I request
condolences.
I request everyone to stay safe and please follow COVID appropriate behavior. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prashant.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, sir.
Vikas Singh and Ardendu and Prashant. So nice.